Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Drama Llamas.
And I'm Stephen Jeffries, who is going to talk like this for the entire episode for absolutely no reason. Just, because I can. It's more fun this way.
Today we are discussing sections 4 and 5 of The Art of Dramatic Writing.
Sections 4 and 5 of Chapter 2.
Bingo.
Characters and whatnot.
The section 4 covers character growth. And so we'll just go ahead and start with that. I'm actually a little out of the shot there. One of the best things about this chapter was just starting off where Egri talks about regardless of the medium in which you are working, you must know your characters thoroughly. And you must know them not only as they are today, but as they will be tomorrow or years from now. Which is definitely evocative of the bone structures that we worked with last week. What do you think?
Oh, I think it's brilliant. It makes a point. You've got to do a lot more than just, sit down and think about it for a few minutes. You've got to imagine yourself, who is this person in their entirety? You can't just sit down in your head and have an imaginary cup of tea with them and, be all hunky-dory. You have to really put forth a lot of effort, or they're going to come off as plastic and shallow, and they might even have a really bad English accent, and that would truly be a disaster. That's unacceptable, Douglas.
Whenever I think of character growth, as I was going through this chapter, all I could think about was the growth of the character Walter White on Breaking Bad.
Yeah, chemistry teacher turned drug lord. You don't get more extreme than that.
This is spoiler-free, so no worries. But just thinking about how his character evolves over the course of these 5 seasons, I would venture to say that Walter White is probably the best character on television right now, simply because of the way his character grows.
Although some might call it a devolution, because where Walter starts out as a very nice, gentle man for the most part, we see over the course of these seasons, he finds out he has cancer. No spoiler, it's in the description. So, because of this, he has nothing to lose, and he spirals downward, making decision after decision after decision, wherein he feels completely trapped by his circumstances, and crappy decision leads to a worse situation, in which he makes another terribly crappy decision, and before long, this very gentle chemistry teacher is cooking methamphetamines with a dropout and getting into all sorts of trouble with the law, with his family. Needless to say, it doesn't go well, or it just wouldn't be good TV. So yes, it's fantastic. Page 67. The contradictions within a man and the contradictions around him create a decision and a conflict. These in turn force him into a new decision and a new conflict. And that's exactly what happens. He's a nice guy, he's a law-abiding citizen, he's a teacher, he's got a 15-year-old son, yet he's cooking methamphetamines because he feels forced into it by his situation. Cooking methamphetamines creates a variety of new situations, each of which have to be reacted with in turn, and things just quickly go down the crapper from there. So,
another bit actually on 67 is where Egri talks about planting a seed, and that sort of metaphor for character growth. And that, when you plant a seed, it seems for a while to lie dormant. Actually, moisture attacks it immediately, softening the shell of the seed so that the chemical inherent in the seed and those which it absorbs from the soil may cause it to sprout. So we definitely see that in the case of Breaking Bad with Walter. Not to give too much away, but where he starts out, mild-mannered chemistry high school teacher, and becomes...
I think I pinched a loaf in my brand new big boy pants. What are you doing?
What's wrong, Chief? Having a little trouble walking?
kind of a psycho. A little bit, at times.
You could argue that, certainly.
Psycho.
77, when they do the little sample questions and answers, one of those reminded me, again, of Walter. We're going to talk about him a lot, so get used to it. Question, weren't his mistakes simply stupidity? Answer, yes, but don't forget that all blunders, yours and mine, are stupid after they are made. At the time, they may grow out of generosity, sympathy, and understanding. What we term stupid at the last may have been a beautiful gesture at the first. Walter's trying to do this. He is putting himself at huge risk to save his family. It's a kind of misguided but beautiful sentiment in the same way. Yes, it's stupid, but it's only stupid after he looks back and realizes, all the destruction that he's causing. And I thought that was really interesting. How people will scream at a television screen, oh, that's so stupid. But this point is really nice, and they're talking about Tartuffe here, I think, Here, I trust you, have all my money. But I think that it's a really interesting statement.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
and then later on that page, too, I think the way Egri defines growth is particularly good. Growth is a character's reaction to a conflict in which he is involved. And that just speaks so much to just that idea of where it's, he has to make decisions. And with these new decisions that he has to make comes new conflicts. So it definitely does not allow for any sort of staticness, I suppose.
No, things change way too fast for Walter to have the luxury of being static. I mean, it's good writing, but he's a good enough character that he responds in a way that really makes things interesting. So then, I suppose we could transition into him being a strong character. Oh, see how that worked? That was very nice. It's very nice.
We'll go on and talk about Section 5 then.
Strength of will in a character.
Which evokes a sort of Nietzschean thing, but I won't even begin to make it sound like I know what I'm talking about, Nietzsche. We have a friend of ours that will do that just fine, but he's not here right now. So.
Derrida, Foucault, Socrates. See, I can name philosophers too, Doug. It makes me sound smart.
But with Strength of Will, we start out, and again, just the first sentence of the chapter is fantastic. A weak character cannot carry the burden of protracted conflict in a play. He cannot support a play. We are forced then to discard such a character, as a protagonist. There is no sport if there is no competition. There is no play if there is no conflict. And just so much depends on the interaction between the character and the conflict. We can't really have a character that, ultimately stays away from the conflict.
That's boring.
Exactly. We got to have a character that is engaged to the conflict in some way.
I find it interesting that he goes out of his way to say protracted conflict in a play. And it seems to me that the temptation would be there to come up with an idea. A character A and character B, you imagine this explosive scene where the two characters are really going at it and the tension is running high, and you want to write about that scene and then expand on that and explode that into a whole story or a play. I've tried doing that with a short story, with my numerous now dead novels that I never seem to finish, and it's interesting that he says protracted, because two characters that could make fantastic scene, interactions might not be able to run an entire play.
It's true.
I thought that was an interesting distinction. I'd never thought of it that way.
Another point that comes up too is on the bottom of 82, he says these characters too, when he's describing the two characters, Martha and Webster, in, I believe, Shaw's Bury the Dead, talks about how these characters too are pulsating with fighting strength. Whatever they do, they'll force opposite wills to clash. So then that's where the drama comes in, is this not so much a movable force meets an unstoppable object, or unstoppable force. Yeah, you get
two people butting heads.
Right.
It's almost like two unstoppable forces meeting, because neither character wants to give in. I mean, one of them will give eventually, but the momentum with which they clash is really astounding.
And I mean, even shortly after that, where he's talking about Anton Chekhov's characters, and that they are so strong in their passivity that the accumulated force of circumstance has a hard time crushing them. Where it's this sort of weak characters, weak of will, I suppose, still make for strong characters.
You're talking about Jeter, right?
Yeah, later where he
Tobacco Road.
Yeah, where he brings up the example of Jeter Lester,
Where heck of a name.
Oh yeah, I kept wanting to say Jester, and then I realized that was wrong.
The lead jester. He's keen on internet speak.
But I mean, he, according to Eggery, is one of the strongest characters of our time, simply because no catastrophe is great enough to move him. He's just so about everything.
Yeah, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So
it's something that I feel like that's almost how Walter starts out with Breaking Bad. Is he starts out, finds out he has cancer, doesn't tell
anyone,
any of his family that he has it until a little bit more down the line.
Right, and that's a big point of contention too. What I found interesting is on the very end of the book, this chapter section thing. It talks about there's no such thing as a weak character, and I thought that was really interesting. And this last line, I really love it. The question is, did you catch your character at the particular moment when he was ready for conflict? Which is really encouraging, because it almost suggests that if you have a character you like who can't necessarily run a play or fuel what is necessary for a protagonist, play with them a little bit. Maybe 2 years previously that person might have been in the right spot, or maybe you need to run them down the road 10 years or wait until something tragic happens to them. Walter's got the nothing to lose mentality going for him, and that's what drives him to do a lot of things that normally he wouldn't. And that's what makes him such an interesting character, is he steps out and does things he would normally not do. Because, screw it, sod it, I've got cancer, what are you going to do to me, shoot me? So, very interesting.
Where we start out, we kind of expect in that scene that we show at the very beginning, we kind of expect him to not do anything. I know when I watched the episode the first time, when I saw him walk out, I was just thinking...
Yeah, I thought they were going to leave.
He just walked out, like, wow. But then, this was that right circumstance that Eggery talks about, where Walter comes back in and just lays
stomps him
beat down on this schmuck of a teenager or college student or whatever the hell he is.
Yep.
It's interesting to see these chapters and how they apply to something so relevant right now. And in a medium such as television, because so much of television anymore is just saturated with things like reality TV, where the characters are, though probably constructed, just so not compelling.
At least Jersey Shore got cancelled, finally.
There's
6 seasons too late. 6 seasons. Well,
but,
gotta start somewhere.
Karma, baby.
Exactly.